At what point do black lives start having value?
All right. Hot, 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 well, a subject. Black Lives Matter. Uh, well, talk about it, Dad, or you want me to start?
Well, you go ahead. Go ahead and, yeah.
All right. Sensitive subject. Want to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Not sympathetic, but empathetic.
Yeah, and kind, considerate.
Well, and people are pissed off. And, I want to be empathetic to them, even that are angry. And I want to say this quickly so it can't get taken out of context. Black Lives Matter. Yes, they do. And nobody debates that. And I wish Black Lives Matter to black people more, because it's so interesting. As a white person, I'm not responsible for your value. You've got to find value in yourself. What does it matter if I think Black Lives Matter unless they matter to you?
That's good. I think that's good.
And what they don't understand, as I spoke about earlier when it comes to our brethren down south and everything, in this country, your life has value. If you know your rights, your life has value, but you have to know your rights.
You could go push somebody else around. I know my rights, okay?
Nobody's pushing you around and nobody's saying anything.
You're not going to push me around because I didn't let you.
And that's what gives your life value. But if you're just willing to give up your rights, our police force, I think, has forgotten that we employ them.
Okay, I'm going to what's your name? Because I'm going to challenge you on that, because I know that the scope of your authority stops with the driver. So I know, excuse me, Sergeant.
Okay.
First of all, and we have rights that they can't touch. Not only can they not touch them, they're supposed to uphold them.
Good. Do your job, be a public servant and treat the people with respect. Absolutely. And don't show up like you're above anybody, because you're not. You're upholding your oath. That means you're underneath it. The only time you go above it is when I commit a crime. You take jurisdiction over me. Other than that, you be respectful because we're equals.
They're to operate underneath the law. That means uphold the law. And until we break the law, they have absolutely zero authority over us.
So that, unless I commit a crime, you are equals to everybody on the street. So don't pull up like you're high and mighty.
Until we break the law. Then there's certain things that we have granted them the ability to do when we break the law. But until then, they work for us. And black people need to understand that, but not abuse that, but respect that. And respect themselves. Their lives have value. But this whole movement about Black Lives Matter, I get it. I mean, it's becoming a political movement just like anything else. But that's it. They need to understand their life has value. I can't give it to them.
Well, I think a good illustration of this, and it seems like it was Dave Ramsey, says there are three things that you can do as a young person that can more or less guarantee a successful life. Number one, finish high school. Number two, don't have children out of wedlock. And three, get married. And if you observe these three things, at least you have a foundation for a solid life. Now, when we were last in Thomaston, Georgia, we moved from Thomaston back to Kingman, Kansas in 2012. But just prior to our leaving, I became aware of the fact that 60% of the black students in the Thomaston High School would not graduate.
It's crazy.
Now, what can they look forward to? What kind of job possibilities are there for such people? And whether it's white or black, okay? Now, there are reasons why they may not graduate. That's another issue. But for each black person, young person, they need to understand that life's going to be a terrible uphill battle if they don't have a high school graduation or a certificate or
well, it's going to be harder. I mean, it's possible, but statistically, it's bad. Numbers matter. Stats matter.
These are facts, and facts don't care about your feelings.
You handicap yourself.
That's a good word.
Graduating high school is easy. And This is the problem, who's pushing you, People talk about white privilege. Well, here's a secret to white privilege. It's easy. It's our fathers. That's the secret to white privilege. And we're trying to screw that up as much as possible. As the single parent homes goes up, so does everything else bad. There's nothing good that goes up when you have single family homes. Nothing. Only bad things go up. I heard, what's her name? She's a blonde. She's kind of sassy.
Is she on
Political shows, yes. I can't think of her name. It doesn't matter.
The statistics still are, if you look at it from the end of the spectrum of who ends up in jail, who ends up a murderer, who ends up a teenage runaway, who ends up getting pregnant out of wedlock herself, who ends up a rapist, about 70%, according to both the Village Voice and all these conservative pro-family groups, are going to be the children of single mothers. I mean, that is simply a fact.
And facts don't care about your feelings.
She says the worst thing you can do for your child is to raise them in a single family home. That is the worst thing to do. It doesn't matter if you're born any which way you want to call it. The worst thing is single family homes.
Well, I know, I don't know what community this happened in, but it illustrates this point. They were getting ready to build a new jail, and they wanted to make it pretty big. And I don't know whether the county commissioners or what governing body was saying, well, how large do you think you need to make the jail? And he said, well, you tell me how many single parent families you have in school, and I can tell you how many jail cells we're going to need. That's for both whites and blacks. And this is incredible, people. And it can't be changed in a hurry, and it isn't going to be changed by people, demonstrating or whatever. I've heard of stories of discrimination against the blacks by white policemen and so forth. That can be changed. But the fact that a black person doesn't have a father, now that's going to take some doing to get that straightened out.
It can be done in one generation. How do you get somebody out of anger that's angry about everything? How do you talk to them? And you got to love them out of it. Mm-hmm. Black lives matter, but Jesus' life matters more.
His last name is Christ. He has the power of flight.
To everybody. That's the thing. They need Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
And they've had it. Martin Luther King was so good. He might have been a womanizer or whatever, but who gives a shit? It didn't matter. Uh-huh. He was a good man.
I just want to do God's will.
And his words were so wise and so good. And what he was doing was he was showing that a black life matters. And he was showing that they have rights. Behind Martin Luther King was Jesus. And I think in his life, Jesus was first. And God was first. And that's what made it work. And until you have a leader that comes forward like that with the humility and the ability to articulate and speak and knowledge that Martin Luther King had, there's nothing we can do about it. As white people,
Very, very good, very articulate, son. But when we were in Uganda, and I think this can possibly be said of every African country, I don't know. But there, the Africans have no problems with being black.
Right. It was just a whole different thing.
In fact, there were times when we were back in the bush, and not just back in the bush there in Uganda, but folk had never seen a white person before.
Y'all act like you never seen a white person before.
We spent 2 weeks in Uganda, and the first week we were in the largest city called Kampala, and we were at a church that held There might have been, through the course of a day, 1,000 people that came in there. Mm-hmm. And I bet 60% of them had never seen a white person before. You know, it was crazy. I mean, Dad would ask them, how many times this is the first time you ever seen a white person? I mean, a lot of hands went up. It's like, oh. And I noticed this in Atlanta too. I think black people take pride in Atlanta. You know, there's something special about that. And that might be just the whatever Martin Luther King there established, still just kind of going down through a few generations. But they didn't have a chip on their shoulder. You know? It was that was it. I just don't think they had the chip on their shoulder. They didn't have the history to be mad. And you know your history, but don't be controlled by your history.
Well, you know, as we're just kind of thinking out loud here about dealing with the problem of your skin color. See, I'm a Southerner, and it probably comes across here that way, the way I talk.
You've got this kind of like Florida panhandle thing going, whereas what you really want is more of a Savannah accent, which is more like molasses just sort of spilling out of your mouth.
I sound more Southern than you do, I think, now.
Oh, okay. When we were in Thomaston, we went to a full gospel businessmen's session, which was led some black guys. And afterward, one of these fellas had the liberty to say that he hated Africans. And that really put me back. It's a black fella talking about he hated Africans. And what it was, it's just he hated that the Africans were being Africans. They were just free to be who they were.
He thought they were arrogant.
Yeah. Part of the problem is with black Americans is that they feel like their problems possibly would be solved if they could be white.
Yes.
But I mean, whites have all kinds of problems. My gracious, you know. The problem is not the skin color. I mean, I don't believe that our yellow-skinned brothers have this problem in this country.
Yeah, no one talks about Asian privilege. Oh. They're starting to.
But see, Chinese have a father in the home. They respect their elders.
Well, not just Chinese.
But
all of them. Koreans,
we're
Japanese,
all the Asians.
Yeah, that's important to have. Family is important.
Yeah. And I think what's becomes critical in this country is if we're talking about Black Lives Matter, then what about all the abortions? At what point do Black lives start having value? And that oh my, this thing is so far beyond me, Billy.
Well, there's nothing we can do about it. They've got to do it for themselves. Black lives matter to me as much as any white life or any other life. Black lives don't matter to black people. And until they know their value, then good luck. I've always said this. Moving across the country or moving to a new town or moving to a new school, if you can't be happy where you're at, you're not going to be happy where you're going. You know, there's a lot of things that are like that.
Yeah. Well, your problems travel with you.
You've got to find happiness. Well, if you don't know Jesus, you can forget about finding happiness.
And I think people need to realize, too, that for each individual, he or she is his biggest problem. Right. I'm my biggest problem. You're not my biggest problem.
Right.
You know, I'm my biggest problem. I wish there was something wonderful and clever to say about that, but anyway.
No. Well, I was just thinking about the power of forgiveness. You know, sometimes I think we get a sense that black people are still pissed off about slavery. And maybe they are. I don't care. And if you're mad at white people for it, we don't care. I had nothing to do with slavery, and I just don't care. And until you forgive us, I have control over you, and it's not, you know, you're giving me control when I don't care.
I don't care.
I don't want that kind of control, and I don't need that control. But you're giving people control when you don't forgive them. If you're ticked off at somebody because they fired you or did wrong to you, and you're thinking about it all the time, I can't wait to get back at them, they're going on with their lives. They don't care. Mm-hmm. But you give them power by not forgiving them. And when you forgive them, you take back that power.
Mm-hmm. Amen. That's good.
Yeah.
Don't want a complication.